Hello, I'm Terry Martin, and it is my great pleasure to be with you today for this session on the future of the EU from the perspective of Central Europe. We have 4 foreign ministers with us here today, and I'm going to introduce them very briefly. You can read all you want about them in the program because they do have illustrious careers and very interesting credentials. I'll start just with what I have here. Well, actually, I'll start right here with Péter Szijjártó, the Foreign Minister of Hungary. Just next to him, a face that you've already seen here at the forum a couple of times, Ivan Korczok of the Slovak Republic. Next to him, we have Jakub Kulanek, I hope I'm getting this right, of the Czech Republic, and Zbigniew Rau at the end from the Republic of Poland. So another warm round of applause for all 4 of them. Gentlemen, it's great to see all of the 4 foreign ministers of the Visegrad group gathered here today at the GLOBSEC 21. What could be better than that, really? And congratulations, by the way, on the 30th anniversary of the V4. By the way, I know the group has had its ups and downs over the years, both before and after your EU accession in 2004. But today we want to talk not about too much about the past, but more about where we are today and how you see the future. Now, before we get started, I just want to remind the audience that we are very interested in hearing your questions to the foreign ministers, and we're going to try to integrate them into this discussion towards the end. So you look at your app. If you're also joining us virtually, you can also submit questions using your app, and we'll try to bring those in towards the end of the discussion. So do be thinking about that along the way. Now, to set a baseline for talking about the future, I would first like to quickly ask each of you how you see the EU right now. Is the union that we have here today in the European Union what your country imagined it would be 17 years ago when you joined the EU? And if it's not the way you thought it would be, is that because the EU has changed, or is it because you have changed? Let's start right here with Minister Sijarto.
Good afternoon to all of you. Thank you very much for invitation, Ivan. Thank you for giving us the chance again for Visegrad foreign ministers to express our views here. I think that the whole world has changed. It has changed a lot, especially during the recent 1.5 years. And I think it's absolutely not an exaggeration to say that we are entering a new age, a new world order, both when it comes to global politics and global economy. And what we understand from the current situation is that this new age or this new world order starts with a very tough competition. A tough competition regarding who's going to be stronger, or the strongest, and who's going to be the winner of the competition for the redistribution of the capacities of the global economy in the new era. If we look at the share of GDP we, EU, do have now, it's unfortunately much less compared to what we used to have 10 years ago. If we look at the political strength of ours, well, about this we can debate, but regarding GDP is definitely about figures.
GDP relative to other countries?
To global.
Okay.
I mean, the share of European Union's GDP to the global GDP has shrinked a lot, unfortunately. It has many aspects, of course, because others have grown much more quickly. But what I think would be the most important now is to make sure that the European Union is going to be among the winners of this new age, both when it comes to political strength and when it comes to economic power. And the way how we can make EU strong, I would say again, is that we make the member states themselves strong. So, you know, we never believed in the concept called United States of Europe, but we always believed in the concept of strong EU based on strong member states. Okay. And we really still do believe that if the member states are themselves strong, you add them together, it will end up in a strong European Union. This is our position.
Okay, so competitiveness very much at the forefront of your perspective on the EU. Minister Kocak.
Well, thank you and good afternoon, and warm welcome to my colleagues from Visegrad. First, when entering the room, that was a very exceptional feeling, because rarely when V4 show up, people are clapping. And I hope people will be clapping also at the end of this panel. But you asked about our view 17 years ago when we joined European Union. Exactly. In a retrospective and all in all, with all the problems, I think it's a success story for my country. If you look around how the country looks like, certainly it's because we've been working hard in order to change our country. But I dare say that without being member of European Union, the outcome would not be that positive, because it opened the country. It has brought new responsibility to us, which is changing positively the country. And it has opened opportunities and economic development. We joined Eurozone as the only country of Visegrad. But certainly, one has to see, in order to make the picture complete, that we have not expected when we joined that more than a decade of a crisis would be ahead of us. And that was difficult, and that's the legacy we have to deal with also when talking about the future, because it's fine to talk about what we want to achieve in the future, but unless we address the issues which are on the table and that are the outcome of unresolved crisis, which we have experienced over the last 10, 12 years, we can barely talk about challenges in the future. But the overall outcome of our integration, I hope I speak on behalf of Slovak citizens, is a very positive one.
Mr. Kolenek, you, of course, have watched the EU evolve too. You seem a younger man than myself, so you have a younger man's perspective on this. What's your feeling about how the EU has evolved and what the Czech Republic's position is in it relative to what you imagined 17 years ago?
Well, first of all, thank you for having me. It's really a welcome change to be sitting here, along my V4 colleagues, but more importantly, the fact that this is taking place in the physical form. It's quite refreshing, and that's a joyful feeling indeed. But it's a tricky question, and I always say, obviously, the obvious answer would be yes. The EU has evolved for sure, but
and so has your country.
Yeah, well, true. Yeah, but the most important thing here is that sometimes I cannot help but think that we tend to forget maybe what we were getting ourselves into. And that is, a lot of hard work and responsibility. Just the fact that now we can sit at the table in Brussels, and this is, we have this ownership, this shared ownership, and it's up to us. Sometimes I feel it hasn't quite sinked in yet fully, but with time, I'm very hopeful. But the most important thing here is that in the years to come, I believe that we will be able to sort of not think of is it different? Is it a different EU than we were hoping for? But rather, it's the EU. We can the EU will be as we make it. It's our it's our doing. So I think this once we can accept, it will make the whole of the EU a much better place.
Mr. Rao, you've watched the EU evolve as well. Poland has also evolved. I was actually there where the borders come together among some of the Visegrad states together with Germany in 2004 and witnessed this accession from that perspective, which was a fascinating and moving moment. Poland being a large neighbor of Germany, where I live, this was a very significant and moving situation there. How have you seen the EU evolve relative to what your country's aspirations were, your expectations there? Because I know it was quite controversial in Poland, the idea of even joining the EU.
Yes, thank you very much. Let me begin in the most traditional way by thanking the GLOBSEC and Ivan Korczok personally for inviting us and offering this opportunity to discuss this issue. Well, let me say that I'm not in a position to agree with you, because the issue of joining the EU was not so controversial in Poland. The overwhelming majority was for joining, and still today the overwhelming majority, one of the highest actually in the EU, is for our presence in the EU structure. So I don't know from where you are taking this perception.
I'd be happy to provide you with an article that I wrote at the time about it, where the polling numbers.
Okay.
Anyway, we don't need to go into that.
I appreciate your knowledge based on the articles, but it's my country, and I know the feeling of the people.
I defer to you.
Quite frankly, 17 years ago, there was an overwhelming feeling in Poland that European Union, united Europe, integrating Europe is the most natural place for us. And this feeling still prevails. There is no question about that. What we expected from the European Union at that time, I would say actually two things. First, that we are joining a political European structure with strong European institutions, which are helping to pursue the interests of member states and the strong member states. So it was a community of a cooperation, of mutual understanding based on the principle of equality, subsidiarity, and proportionality. And I suppose that is exactly what most of us in Poland expect from the European Union in the future. In order to be satisfied as much as we were 17 years ago, I suppose what is absolutely necessary is a clear-cut distinction between the competences of the European institutions and the member states. If we manage to do that, the Union is not going to be perfect institutionally, but something that's going to be very satisfactory for every member state. This is one thing.
Good.
This is, no, I have
Just briefly, if you don't mind, because I'd like to move on to looking at the
other
future.
thing that we attach enormous value to is single market. A single market with its 4 freedoms, because it makes our economies competitive within the European Union, and the European Union competitive in the world, which is going to be more and more complicated also economically now.
Indeed, the region that you represent here is one of the most dynamic in the European Union, it must be said. So that's setting the stage. That's kind of the baseline for where we are now. And I want to now start looking towards the future. You mentioned, Minister Korczak, that the EU has suffered a number of crises, and that you maybe had not anticipated these crises. That's the nature of crises, right? That whether it's economic or whatever, something happens. And very recently, or just now, indeed, we are experiencing a crisis that is shaking the EU to its foundations. Not just the EU, but the entire world, it must be said. We're talking, of course, about the pandemic, right? The pandemic has hit us in a way that we never could have imagined. Has hit the global economy. We a lot of talk about the economy here. It's hit the global economy, but also the fabrics of our societies, how we live together, fundamental freedoms that we cherish have been compromised, and we are slowly coming out of this lockdown, which we can hope will continue. But talking about the forces shaping the EU's evolution right now, the Austrian foreign minister this morning, Alexander Schallenberg, this morning, he suggested that the pandemic, though terrible as it is, it has also provided a positive impetus for the EU, that it is bringing the EU together perhaps and changing it in a way that might be positive. Do you see it that way? Do you see this pandemic that we are in right now, this crisis, as it's shaping the EU? The decisions that have been made at European level on how to deal with it. Do you think this is going to make the EU stronger moving forward or not? Who would like to begin?
Peter.
You guys get together all the time. You've done this before, I know. But
I need 3 more minutes.
Okay.
Look, we always knew that the Slovaks were fantastic and very polite hosts. So you don't disappoint us. That's great. Look, I think that the EU made some very good decisions and some very bad decisions when it comes to tackling the crisis. Let's start with the good one, okay? To be equally polite to Ivan.
That was Europe. Come on.
It was absolutely a good decision to allow the states, the governments, to give financial incentive to investments of private companies during the crisis under much more flexible circumstances than during peaceful times. We have taken the advantage of this flexibility put forward by the European Commission, and we decided not to distribute money on a social basis, but to give investment incentive to companies who have agreed to make investments into their capacity and or technology, parallelly to making a commitment not to fire anybody. And this was a good decision by European Commission to allow this. We have broken investment record last year in Hungary, regardless of the pandemic, because we used that scheme. What was a bad decision was that regarding the procurement of the vaccines, I think EU proved to be very slow because big entities outside of the European Union, including the United Kingdom, the United States, Israel, could start the vaccination campaigns of them much more quickly than the European Union could. And on the other hand, what I think was really a big mistake, that the issue of vaccines was considered as of ideological or geopolitical nature.
Okay, I'm sorry, I'm just going to interrupt you, if you don't mind. I'm just going to interrupt you very, very briefly, and my apologies, but what I would like is for you to think not just about like what has gone wrong in handling the pandemic, but rather, has the pandemic going to lead to any changes? Like, okay, this was slow. This, the way that the EU handled the procurement of vaccines, it was almost universally criticized. The point is, will the EU learn from that? Is this going to create an opportunity for reform within the EU that will shape its future development in a way that you find encouraging?
Yeah, we definitely do have to, because, well, I mean, EU does have to change. You're totally right, because I think what has become very clear, that institutions can lead the integration very well under peaceful circumstances, but when it comes to crisis and when it's time to act, then we need leaders. And then simply institutions cannot replace leaders. And that's why I think that the decisions made on national basis, on member states basis, were extremely important. And I think under serious emergency situations, the room for, or the space for national decisions should be kept free and should not be, let's say, taken into consideration as if they were means to violate the European unity. Okay, so I think a healthy balance between answers coordinated by Brussels and the answers made on national level must be kept. And I think this is something that we have to learn from this crisis, definitely.
Okay, there's a lot more that we could talk about there vis-a-vis Hungary and the EU and some of the aspects, but perhaps we'll get into that a little later. Minister Kok, you've had a few moments to think about that. Perhaps are you ready?
I'm never ready to answer this question because I'm sick and tired of receiving all the time a question whether crisis A or B, pandemic now will be the point that will change finally European Union for the better. And I don't think
many people are interested in this.
And I don't think it's completely appropriate to ask whether the EU or what went wrong, what was fine with the European Union. Tell me and show me, identify one state that was prepared for this pandemic. Not that the European Union was not able to deliver masks at the beginning, but the states were not ready. And in spite of all the deficiencies and shortages and problems, I dare say that had we not entitled European Union to procure and acquire the vaccines collectively for us, individually, I don't think Slovakia would be better prepared to acquire registered vaccines, because the truth is that there was access, but not to registered vaccines. And Hungary has decided, we followed that, to go for other vaccines outside of those who were outside of the European market, if you want that, but that's reality. Two, I don't think it's so appropriate to say that the EU was slow, because the other day in France I received the question that European Union acted as if it was a state, when it comes to procuring vaccines. But it took us 60 days, and that was a big difference between the United States and United Kingdom, because there was a state decision, which we have not back then. So those are realities with which we are facing. And the change that it may trigger for the future, yes, maybe there will be acceptance amongst member states, amongst our citizens, to give more competence for the European Union when it comes to health. But there we too have to identify what kind of competence we transfer on European Union when it comes to health protection. That could be a lesson. But once again, I don't think that this pandemic will be a watershed change for us to resolve the problems we've been facing over the last 10 or 12 years. I mean, can we resolve all obstacles and probably remove obstacles within internal market which is not properly functioning, irrespective of pandemic? Can we complete still the Eurozone, which is a difficult legacy from previous crises? And you can continue. Can we improve our foreign policy because of pandemic? I don't think so.
Okay.
So what is needed is a determination and readiness to act in order to improve things which do not function. And this is my expectations from the upcoming debate within the Conference on the Future of European Union.
Okay. Well, still, I think it might be appropriate to ask this question about whether this crisis has provided some impetus for change, positive or negative. So I'll continue. If unless our other guests here think otherwise. Would you like to care to comment, Minister Kulenic?
Perhaps briefly, because I very much subscribe to what's been said before. Look, when it comes to the pandemic, one has to realize that it was a wake-up call. And here I would slightly disagree with Ivan. Here, I'd very much like to see this as a watershed moment. It won't be, probably. But, I think there was this, painful realization that the EU is ill-equipped to address the health crisis of this magnitude. But look, we didn't, nobody planned for that. And, here I agree with you. The notion that this was some kind of a nation state that failed. This is I mean, that's silly. I think obviously, and mistakes were made, but also. I think there's been a lot of good and a lot of positive that's been accomplished, and we should not lose sight of this. And as we move forward, I think we should look at this as lessons learned, and make sure that when the next pandemic hits us, we are prepared. But as the EU, the EU institutions, but also member states. So I think, as the saying goes, no good crisis should go to waste, and we should look at it that way.
Okay, Minister Rao, perhaps we want to move on, or would you like to say something about that? Because again, Minister Schallenberg from Austria was adamant that there were good things that were going to come out of this for the EU, for the future of the EU. I'm just wondering if you share that or not. Very briefly, kind of a yes or no.
Well, I wouldn't like to overstate the importance of this experience. It has been a traumatic experience, and from each such a multi-dimensional experience, smart leaders and concerned citizens in a democratic system can draw their own lessons. And as far as the European Union is concerned, I suppose that this experience indicates some strengths and some weaknesses of the European Union. For example, I'm a supporter of the subsidiarity principle, and I suppose that the validity of this principle has been confirmed in this crisis. Because if you take, for example, the medical infrastructure that had to be created at this spot in order to accommodate the COVID-19 patients, nobody can replace the local authorities and in doing that. So what is absolutely necessary is to create a space for flexible, reasonable activities. So if in Poland we have a boost now of e-medical system, right? There are so many digital arrangements considering medical services and so on. So it can be done where? At the bottom, certainly.
Okay.
When you think about other things like access to drugs very often, or access to medical data, of course, the European Union could be very helpful here, okay? It's a matter, what I said, it's a matter of a division of competences. And also, what is extremely important, it's a human and political attitude here. Do you recall the beginning of the pandemic in our part of Europe? Borders got closed.
Yes.
This was very unfortunate. And what's the end of that? I'm very proud that the medical staff from Poland came over here to Slovakia to assist the Slovak colleagues in the action of the vaccinations of many people.
Exactly.
So this is exactly the indication that we can learn in a small way from this kind of experience, like any other experience.
Very good, because there is a lot of talk about the health union now at the European Union level, and whether if changes can be made that would allow this to evolve better.
Do you really insist on calling this a health union? I mean, we have
I'm
a
not
good
calling it a health
European
union. It's
Union.
just
Why
what
do you
the
want to
Commission
add
itself is calling
adjectives to that, I suppose?
I'd much rather call it a healthy union.
Anyway, I do sense some skepticism on the panel about the impact of the pandemic in terms of the EU evolving. I want to get on to some other questions, particularly about the conference on the future of Europe, but perhaps Minister Korczak, if you want to make a quick intervention.
No, what came to my mind when I was listening to my colleagues who were right on everything what they said, but Jakub, I wish it was right what you said, that it was a wake-up call. My experience says that with each and every crisis in the European Union, the outcome is a wake-up call, and then we fall asleep. I mean, this is the problem because, Eurozone, what is it, migration, more or less, we awaken from time to time, and so on and so on. So I wish that this time it was a wake-up call. And second, a more provocative question, I entirely understand with my friend Zbigniew, who says, subsidiarity and competence and flexibility, but can we identify as we sit here something where the EU has prevented us from doing something? I believe the challenge and the failure.
I could.
Yes.
We were under very heavy attack for months because of buying vaccines from the East.
But that's not a question of competence. That was a question of rules. I mean, we agreed within European, and I'm not criticizing you.
You bought vaccines from the East as well?
Sorry?
You bought vaccines from the East as well?
Yes, after you. Now we
and I helped. And I helped. Personally, I did.
Yes, I know something about that.
Yeah, I'm proud of that.
And so we bought after you decided to
good decision, by the way.
not to follow the rules that we established within the European Union. You opened the door, and this is perfectly your right.
Yeah, but
gentlemen,
right.
sorry, just 1 second. You say that we didn't follow the rules, but the European regulation says that there are two ways a vaccine can be approved in the European Union, either by EMA or under emergency circumstances by the national regulators. So what we have done has been and is enshrined in the European regulations. And look, we were not ready to look at the vaccines as ideological or geopolitical nature, but as tools of saving lives of the people. And the fact that we are at 65% of vaccination rate, and we were the first country in EU to open up economy was mostly thanks to our quick steps at the beginning. And I don't feel that we would have violated any common rule or any common agreement, because it was not said that you are not allowed to buy vaccines from anywhere else. We subscribe to the European.
Gentlemen, I'm afraid I'm going to have to interrupt here. Thank you both very much.
You said we went against the regulations.
No.
Okay, then I misunderstood.
I sense that there's a need for further discussion on this topic between the two countries there, and I'm sure that those discussions will continue. But we are talking about the future of Europe here. There's been a lot of discussion, of course, about vaccine procurement and who's buying what from whom under what conditions. But moving forward, there's something that we absolutely have to talk about here today, because it involves everyone in the European Union ostensibly, and that is the conference on the future of Europe. This has been described as one of the largest public consultations, one of the biggest exercises in deliberative democracy on the continent. And I wanted to get your opinions on that. The Conference on the Future of Europe, everyone in the room is probably aware of this, that there is supposed to be this rather long and detailed process that is going to gather input from the citizens of the European Union. And this input is supposed to turn into the form of recommendations, which at the end could be, perhaps should be, written into European law. Now, the question is, what do the member states think of this? How do the states of Central Europe, how do the Visegrad group countries see that? What do you make of this conference on the future of the Europe? Is it going to be valuable or not? Where should we begin? I think I'll start at the other end of the panel first, since we've had a little more conversation here.
Okay. Thank you. My strong impression is that thinking about the future of Europe, we should look at the European Union from the perspective of the citizens, not from the perspective of politicians, or not from the perspective of those who consider themselves reformers, but from the perspective of the citizens, as it should be in any democratic entity.
And that's what this conference supposedly is about.
Exactly. So I dare to believe that, for example, for the average European citizens, such issues, how to structure or restructure European Parliament, whether to have a head candidates, Spitzenkandidaten, or have to transnational lists. It's no as important as the clear-cut division of competences between the member states and the European institutions, whether administrative or judicial institutions. This is the bottom line, because we have to talk about things that people understand. The other thing is very, I suppose, what we have to work upon in the future is the true single market that doesn't discriminate anyone in the European Union. So everybody is treated fairly, whether it's from a big country or a small country. And if you launch a company in one country and you are from another one, so you have every right to compete according to the European rules. And the other thing, extremely important, is the issue that has been brought up by the notion of sovereign autonomy. It's a very questionable issue. I understand that it has been brought up because people expect it, because the member states want to discuss it, but we have to decide what kind of dimension this kind of autonomy is going to be. If it's going to be have an economic dimension, I welcome it. Very, very much so, because I want Europe and each member state in Europe be competitive. But if it's going to have a military dimension, for example, with an intention to replace, for example, some elements of the structure of NATO, realistically, I'm not in favor of it, because our military resources of the European Union, this doesn't need much proof, more than limited.
Okay, so that's if we do have conclusions coming out of the consultation or this conference on the future of Europe that, in your opinion, would undermine your country's sovereignty with respect to defense, on the one hand, that would not be good. But if it were purely to make it more competitive on the economic side, that might be okay. Minister Kulanek, we do need to move along. I would really like to get your views on this, because I want to bring in some questions, and we only have about 12 minutes left.
Okay, I'll try to be brief. I suppose I take it Zbigniew is quite eager to participate in the conference on the future of Europe, which is good. But this might be a bit of a silly stunt, but how many of you in this room actually know about this conference, this endeavor by the European Union? And perhaps more importantly, how many people outside of this room actually know about this quite worthwhile undertaking? But, I mean, I'd be perhaps a bit skeptical, hence, my answer. I mean, I think this is great. We should have it, but I wish we would try to bring the EU closer to its citizens. And really, I believe that putting European citizens at the forefront of this discussion is what the EU needs above all, and maybe using it to raise awareness about what the EU means to individual citizens. That's the way forward. So I think, and it's I guess upon us also to make sure that more and more people actually know about this process, and so encourage people to take part.
You both see it as good in principle. As long as it kind of aligns with your own country's interests, it sounds like, to a degree, although that's not what I'm hearing from you.
I think it's jolly good, but I feel we should encourage people to take part in it more actively.
Any other thoughts on this? I mean, just perhaps this is not really on your radar screen, the Conference on the Future of Europe?
No, of course it is on Peter's radar screen.
Mostly.
No.
Yes.
Let's be serious. My sophisticated answer is we'll see. I don't know, because we promised to our citizens right after we stood in a shock after British referendum in June 2016 and later on in September 2016 that we would come up fairly soon with an answer about the future of European Union. And since then, almost 6 years have elapsed already, and we are still about to launch a conference of which we expect that people in Košice, in Ružomberok, in Kroměříž, I don't know, in Poznan, in Lodz, they'll be coming up with bright ideas about the future. Are we not naive? I don't think it will work that way.
Okay.
We will be engaged in that. My intention is to travel across Slovakia and speak to people, but it will be barely possible and realistic to gather that many people somewhere in east of Slovakia and south of Slovakia and elsewhere to discuss Europe. And once you gather those people, unless you speak like we do, there is silence.
Okay.
There is silence. So it's a bit, my expectations are very limited for that. At the end of the day, it is about political responsibility. What we need more than yet another conference is action. Within European Union, because what has amassed on our table in terms of problems that we are facing, it has been clearly identified. But all the time we've been circumventing those problems. I'm a bit controversial and more provocative, but where else if not here at the conference should we speak that way? So we'll try our best, but at the end of the day, it is about political responsibility to do things for which maybe people will not applaud us, but if politicians are responsible, they'll be doing those things.
I appreciate your candor, which is one of the great things about this GLOBSEC forum, is that we're hearing people of your stature speaking your mind about things. And I know that's not always so easy for diplomats, right? And you are your country's top diplomats. Minister Syniarto, just a few words before I put one question from the audience.
I just have a short remark here. The future of Europe does not equal the future of the European Union, definitely. So if we say future of Europe, this means that we have to include those who are in Europe, but not in the European Union. We, I think, sharing this stage, share an opinion about the importance of enlargement. It would not be an exaggeration either to say that now you see the most pro-enlargement countries of the European Union on the stage. And I do believe that countries from the Western Balkans who have been candidates for a long time should also be included.
Serbia, North Macedonia.
We don't think that the mission, which is called creating European Union, would be complete without the Western Balkans. It's it's very, let's say, unnatural that they are not part of European Union. And to be honest, we are very, very disappointed with the fact that in the recent years, just some very, very minimal successes were reached on the territory of enlargement. You have to count how many chapters were open and closed, basically very close to zero. Next week, there's going to be the IGCs with Serbia and Montenegro. Of course, another very limited success, unfortunately. So what we hope for is that our decision makers will include the countries of the Western Balkans into this series of conferences as well.
Okay, we've also had a question coming in. I've just noticed it in our app about people are very interested in knowing what your positions are on the accession possibilities of Ukraine and Belarus at this point. If any of you really have a strong statement on that, I would welcome that. Otherwise, I'd like to get some questions coming from the audience here. Do we have any questions here in the audience? And just before that, any statements? Okay. We have, I'd just like to bring in, let's see who we got. Oh, right here. Let's if we could get a microphone down here. You don't have to get up. There should be a microphone coming your way. Is there, or not? Is there a microphone? There we go. Just, yeah, great.
The mic.
And if you could just please state your name, your association, and where you're from.
Yes, hello, my name is Amanda Coakley. I'm a Milena Jasinska Fellow at the IWM in Vienna. So this is a question to all four ministers. It was said at the beginning of this event today that the EU will be one of the winners of the new age. Do you think the EU can be a winner when some member states do things like undermine EU law or go against real core principles of the European Union, such as press freedom? Thank you.
What kind of freedom?
Press.
Is that directed to anyone in particular?
I'd be very interested in the Foreign Minister of Hungary and Foreign Minister of Poland.
Okay, I see all of them, but okay, let's start with the, so Poland as well. Who would like to begin?
Look, why are you not brave enough to say what you think? Why don't you pose the question as you really mean it? Do you think that Poland and Hungary do violate the freedom of press? And on what basis do you mean that? Well, why you think we are violating freedom of press? What regulations, what phenomena?
With all due respect, Minister Siarto, I would be grateful if you could maybe just answer the question instead of reflecting
we have
it
to
back
be, but we have to be brave enough.
Audience.
We have to be brave enough to name things as they are. I do believe that European Union can be winner of this new age, but there's one precondition for that. Many, but one for sure, that we stop judging, lecturing each other, we stop interfering into domestic issues of each other, and we bring back the policies of European Union based on mutual respect. And we don't think that we know things better of another country than the people there themselves.
Respect
and
for what?
And we do have to respect the decisions, the democratically made decisions of other countries. And if we can stop accusing each other and we can stop attacking each other on a political basis, then I think European Union can be a winner. And I hope it will be a winner of the new global age, and we will work for that.
I would just bring a follow-up to that, maybe, with respect, with the word respect, because you can respect a country, but there are also principles that are enshrined in Europe, European principles, and I'm just wondering how you balance those out, how you balance respect for a country's sovereignty with respect for the principles that are enshrined in the EU Charter. Would anyone like to reflect on that?
Myself? Yeah, well, you know that
no one else is volunteering.
We who have been part of the European Union, we share the same values, and we have to respect the same regulations. And I think that all the countries who have been represented on this stage are respecting the regulations on which the European Union is based upon.
The rule of law.
And we do respect the sovereignty of ourselves and others as well, including rule of law. Absolutely. You know, we have been under communist occupation 31 years ago. We had to fight for our freedom. We did fight for our freedom. We are proud to be a democratic country, and we will never accept anybody to challenge whether we have a proper functioning democracy or not. If there are concrete issues, which you would like to discuss, we are always ready. Always open and always ready. Article 7 procedure has been going on for how long, Zbig? A year? More than that? You know, all the questions were raised. We answered all of them. Why the procedure is not being closed? Why? Regardless of the fact that all questions were raised and all questions were answered? Because it's political. And this is an interest of the liberal mainstream to have the Article 7 procedure and the continuous attacks against two conservative, patriotic, Christian democratic governments to go on.
Okay, there are different views on this in the European Union.
But this
very
is
clear.
called democracy,
We're all aware
I guess.
of this,
But this is called democracy, that we are allowed to
but
represent
I'd like to bring in
type
Minister
of position.
Korczak. He was just showing some interest before we move on to you. And we only have a couple of minutes, unfortunately. But this is such an important part that we need to do.
You are raising a very important question, and the answer is very simple, especially when it comes from our part of Europe. As Peter has indicated, given our past, we know what it is, the freedom of the media, the freedom of press, because people of my generation were busy producing newspapers in the underground. They were ready to pay the highest price for that, 5-7 years in jail, and so on and so on. And I don't recall that one underground newspaper was denouncing another one, that it's not free enough, and so on and so on. So
we only have about 2 minutes left.
The value, sorry?
We only have about 2 minutes left.
Okay, we have the value of pluralism in our DNA. And we believe that the European Union, if it's going to succeed, it has to respect the value of pluralism. I disagree with you because you have different views than I have. So I can criticize your point of view, and I'm not going to condemn you. I'm not going to preach anything to you, and I'm not going to assume that your contribution to democracy is smaller than mine.
Okay.
Because your prime minister enjoys the same political support among his voters as mine in mine. So start respecting that.
Okay, so respect is obviously a very key principle. I'm sorry to interrupt you here, but we are absolutely out of time, and I just want to bring Minister Korczak in because I know that he did have a point he wanted to make there. Just one sentence, if you'd like to comment.
I'm fine with press. But although it's tough in Slovakia, press is very tough. But two, I want to say on the record, I don't think that the EU is depriving us of our freedom. I think it's on the contrary. Sorry?
Who said that the EU is depriving us of our freedom?
Okay, I can turn here.
Okay.
This way. It was, no, wait, speak.
No.
Final word.
It's a neutral statement because from time to time, we hear voices from Central Europe as if European Union would be a source of problem, and I don't think that's the case. European Union by far is not a perfect project, but over the last years, once again, the voices are loud, and I've been confronted, and I don't like it, with kind of EU bashing.
Okay, but that is going to be the final point. We don't like EU bashing, and I'm sorry we're going to have to leave it there. I'm hearing in my ear that we absolutely have to get out of the room.
It has started now, and we have to come on. Freedom of speech.
I do wish we had more time. I really do, but I'm obliged to clear the room at this point.
That we want the EU to succeed.
I'm so glad to see you enthusiastically engaging here. And we pluralism and respect. A warm round of applause for both of those principles and all four of our foreign ministers with us today. I really want to thank you for engaging with the topics. We really got going there towards the end, and I have a feeling we could have gone on for at least another hour or so. And I hope to have the opportunity to speak with each of you individually as in the future. But right now, I do need to introduce the next.